Holy shit! The doomsday clock is 2 minutes and 30 seconds away from midnight. You know what? This feels like a Watchmen type of night. Hello YouTubers, my name is Frederick Lopez and you are on the Dark Knight of Steel channel. Now, I usually have a second channel called Frederick Lopez under my name in which I review movies, television, games, and comics. And I decided to bring a little bit more of that content to the Dark Knight of Steel channel, much like my Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition review. It's been a crazy week, as you all may know out there. And everything with the Doomsday Clock, it got me thinking about Watchmen, and I've been in my Watchmen mood. And I've talked about many things on the channel, here, on the Dark Knight of Steel, and my Frederick Lopez channel, and I really haven't talked about one of my favorite, and what I think is a very underrated comic book or graphic novel based film, and that is Zack Snyder's film Watchmen. Yes, Watchmen, based upon the graphic novel by Dave Gibbons and Alan Moore. One of the best graphic novels of all time. It made the Times best 100. It made one of Time's 100 best novels and winner of a Hugo Award. So, I have Watchmen under the complete experience. The movie was with the video game end of night. I ended up getting like a bundle. And yeah, for a while this film was quoted to be unfilmable. Terry Gilliam almost made the film, backed out of it, and the film was just in production hell for almost 2 decades. It was just a really hard film to adapt from such a rich graphic novel. And it wasn't until after Zack Snyder's success with 300 that he ended up directing Watchmen. Now I'm going to talk about the film. First, give a brief cast and crew list, plot synopsis, and then what I love about the film and why I think it is an underrated gem and one of the best comic book films ever made. Okay, 2009, Watchmen comes out. It's directed by Zack Snyder, stars Jeffrey Dean Morgan as a comedian, Jackie Earle Haley as Rorschach, Patrick Wilson as Night Owl, Malin Ackerman as Silk Spectre, Matthew Good as Ozymandias, Billy Crudup as Dr. Manhattan, Carla Gugino as the original Silk Spectre, Matthew Ferrer as Moloch, and Stephen McCady as Hollis Mason, the original Night Owl. Watchmen takes place in a gritty and alternate 1985, as the glory days of costume vigilantes have been brought to a close by a government crackdown. But after one of the masked veterans is brutally murdered, an investigation into the killer is initiated by Rorschach. The reunited heroes set out to prevent their own destruction, but in doing so discover a deeper and far more diabolical plot at hand. So yeah, that's pretty much what Watchmen is about in a nutshell. The Watchmen include Rorschach, Night Owl, Dr. Manhattan. The comedian is one that is killed at the very beginning of the film. And Rorschach's really the one initiating the investigation. He's trying to figure out how the comedian was murdered, and he may think that other mass vigilantes who used to be heroes are now targets for this killer. So he has to go out and find out what's going on, and it delves into a deeper, more diabolical conspiracy. One of the writers is actually Solid Snake from Metal Gear Solid. David Hayter wrote the screenplay for Watchmen. He also wrote the original X-Men back in 2000. It's a very well done story. And for those wondering out there, I'm reviewing both the theatrical cut and the director's cut, but more so the director's cut. I did see this in theaters back in 2009, and it wasn't very much a very well-loved film. It reminds me in many ways of Batman v Superman, but it's much better than that film. But just the way people reacted to it, it was a little bit ahead of its time in my opinion. It's kind of similar to how Blade Runner was thought of when it first came out in theaters compared to home video and different versions released of the film. I really loved it back then. I feel like I was the only person that loved Watchmen back in 2009. I was a senior in high school, and I wanted to see what an R-rated comic book movie would look like, an R-rated superhero film, where superheroes can be flawed characters. Now, mind you, I did not read the graphic novel. I was aware of the graphic novel's existence, and was going to read it, but I didn't get around to it by the time the movie came out. So I read the graphic novel after the film. But I still found it to be a very profound experience, and very intense. It's not your average superhero film, and I respected it for that. It's a very different, very gritty world, and in a way where Batman's Superman now showed us a world where Superman exists, where what if Superman exists in our world? This is more like An alternate 1985 of like, if superheroes existed in the real world, what would they be like and how would the world be shaped if superheroes did exist? And I really love that. It plays upon an alternate history where Vietnam was a victory for the United States. Dr. Manhattan helped out. You had vigilantes in the 30s, 40s, and it was just that whole... It's just another look at our own history and stuff that is the same yet different at the same time. There's a lot of stuff that's not in the graphic novel. There's certain heroes that are omitted from the film entirely, and they condense some things, and they also changed the ending. But I feel like Zack Snyder did the best of what he could do. He basically made a faithful adaptation to what a film could have been, really. Now, you could have a 13-hour miniseries, like, say, on HBO, and have, like, the entire graphic novel unfold. That would be awesome, but I feel like for a film's length, he did a pretty commendable job. And one thing I did like is he used a lot of the scenes from the comic books. Visually, he's just a pioneer visually. Say what you will about certain stories and scripts, but Zack Snyder does know how to shoot stuff in a visual manner that's just breathtaking. Scenes with Dr. Manhattan with so much detail, and then on Mars, certain scenes that are exactly like the graphic novel, is just a graphic novel come to life. And the performances, okay, I really, really, really love Jackie Earle Haley as Rorschach. He should have gotten an award of some sort. It's his breakout. I mean, he was in Bad News Bears and some other films, but this is like his breakout. Like, there is one role that I would associate with Jackie Earle Haley. He is Rorschach in the way that Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man and Christopher Reeve is Superman. I mean, he is just awesome. And again, with it being dark and gritty, it was a year after The Dark Knight, and I was kind of ready to see something darker. And he's basically just a vigilante who is unhinged with no moral code. He kills people, he interrogates people, but you see a reason why he's that way. And what made him into the person he is, the vigilante he is. And I like that. And before I go into the other performances, one thing that the graphic novel did good that the film conveys is that these are not all black and white characters. These are very flawed individuals. There's lines of gray within their morality and personalities, and they're not perfect. And that's one thing that I liked. In Marvel Comics, you have relatable characters, but Watchmen took it a step further to show us, hey, heroes and vigilantes are just like anybody else. They're human beings, and they presented them as human beings. And that's one great thing you get to see presented in this film of human beings as superheroes. Dr. Manhattan is like the only one with like pure superpowers, where the rest are pretty much just wearing costumes and beating up criminals to a pulp. Billy Crudup as Dr. Manhattan was fantastic. I love the technology. They had blue lights very early, almost in the way they did Avatar. And he is exactly like what is presented in the comic book. They even have like him completely nude, which is very, very rare. I actually did not notice it the first time watching, but that's just me. Maybe that says something about me. Second time, they're like, oh, look, his blue dong. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I didn't notice. It just flew over my head. I wasn't distracted. I didn't notice that. Okay, moving on. Night Owl. I like Patrick Wilson as Night Owl. He gained a bit of weight for this. And I like how he's not perfect. He's very timid at times, but when he does get back in the Night Owl suit, he's very much the Boy Scout, almost like a version of Batman in this universe. And Alan Moore in the graphic novel originally wanted to use superheroes from the DC universe, and they said no, so he pretty much made sort of similar versions of those characters, where Night Owl's Batman, Dr. Manhattan's like Superman, just different things like that. Jeffrey Dean Morgan is a son of a bitch in this, man. It's much more acceptable to look at now after seeing his role as Negan on The Walking Dead, but like prior to this, I only saw him in like Grey's Anatomy as Denny Duquette, and it was just like, look, it's Denny Duquette, and I thought he was gonna be like a superhero because I didn't read the graphic novel. He's a bastard, a vicious bastard. His performance is just cold and brutal and just basically unempathetic. He has zero empathy for anyone. And it catches up to his character. It's a very kind of tragic yet psychotic character. Same thing with Rorschach. They all are tragic figures in their own way. Malin Ackerman does an okay job as Silk Spectre. She wasn't really that much of a standout, but she was just kind of there. Carla Gugino and the original Night Owl do a good job. Carla Gugino and Malin Eckerman are only a couple years apart, but she does a very good job of portraying like a woman who is the mother to this person. They're only a couple years apart, but you can definitely feel the mother-daughter relationship, even though they're only a couple years apart. But yeah, with comedian, he's vicious, but like everything ties back to him. You see the story, they have flashbacks, and the majority of the film is flashbacks, and you see why the characters are who they are in this predicament. Rorschach's told in a later story, but like Dr. Manhattan, he fails to save this woman when comedian shoots her. You see him starting to lose his humanity. Ozymandias wants to save the world, get a Watchman back together, and he's just like, it's a joke, and like, what is your team going to do to stop nuclear missiles from going off, from the world from blowing up each other, from nuclear war? And it gives him the idea to basically trick world peace at the end. And then Night Owl, like, what happened to the American dream? Is like, what happened to the American dream? It came true. You're looking at it. Stuff like that really adds not only to the comedian's character, but the motivations and backstory for why the characters in the Watchmen film are the way they are at this moment. And Ozymandias, this one, I knew I forgot one. Ozymandias, Matthew Goode, he wasn't exactly how the graphic novel was, but I thought Matthew Goode did a good job as well. I liked how he had a different accent, and it kind of not only portrayed his ego, but how much of a genius he is, how brilliant he is, and I thought he played that really well. He really did seem like a person who was trying to save the world in his own way, even though he was a complete madman about the whole situation. He really did seem like a person who was intelligent, but really had no one to relate to, and figured out one way to have world peace, even if it meant doing something horrific. And I really liked that element in his performance. The action is great. It's a long movie, though. The director's cut is over 3 hours long. It's like about 163 minutes, I think, somewhere around there, give or take, in the theatrical version. One thing I do like in the theatrical version is when you figure out who the killer is, it really moves really fast for the third act. The climax, everything is just flows better. Where the director's cut, they have the side story of Hollis Mason's death and some other things, and it kind of slows down that action. But other than that, it goes by really, really fast for a 3-hour movie. The flow of it is very well done. And I think it's because everything that's in there is needed in there. It's not just extra fluff. It's stuff that moves the plot along, gives context to the characters and backstories. And the performances as well with the editing and direction really help move the film along. If I have to give Watchmen a score, I'd give it a 9 out of 10, an A, and a 4 out of 5. I'd probably give the theatrical cut an 8 out of 5, but I think the director's cut is really well done, and it's, again, the first testament to show that they should have stuck with Zack Snyder's original vision. But I think it's mostly because of the length. It's a really long length. And then the ultimate cut of it has the Tales of the Black Freighter short film that's animated within the director's cut. So it's even longer, but Watchmen is a very well-crafted film, and it's for grown-ups. It's not really for the faint of heart. It's not for your kids. I remember when I saw in theaters, this woman brought her like 8-year-old kid, and then when the comedian was just getting beat up and got thrown out of a window, she took him out, which I'm glad. But I've heard some people have taken their kids to see that movie. I'm like, it's not for kids. Second of all, it's rated R, so what do you expect? So yeah, it's a complex film. It's a deep film, and I just love it. It's different than all the other stuff, and it is ahead of its time. This is before Marvel Studios had the Avengers going along. They just had the release of Iron Man, Incredible Hulk. Dark Knight just came out, so you didn't have Dark Knight Rises, no Man of Steel or DC Universe, so it was a kind of a standalone movie. In a way, it was almost done in the way of how V for Vendetta was adapted, really. But Zack Snyder proved again what a visual master he is, and also adapting something that was, quote, unfilmable is a pretty impressive feat alone, really, in my opinion. And I really think it's a very, very underrated film. Now, I read the graphic novel after the film, and I actually had a lot more respect for the film after reading it. Sure, there's a lot of things I wish they got in there and vice versa, but I did respect what was adapted, and Zack Snyder just used the comic book as a storyboard. I mean, there's all these movies that are made that are adapted, there's writers, and I'm like, Just use the comic book. You have a storyboard. You have pages of storyboards in the comics you could use to put on film. Why don't you use them? And I'm glad Zack Snyder did. You could tell he's a fan of comics, and he just wants to bring what the fans would like onto screen. But the performances are top-notch for the most part, and it's a very tragic and just intense story, and very realistic. Now let's get to some spoiler warnings here. Comedian being Silk Spectre's father, now he was just vicious with the flashback scenes, but Ozymandias being the main killer that killed Comedian and was behind framing Dr. Manhattan, pretty much getting the Tachyon research, making a bomb, blowing up New York City, killing a whole bunch of people, and blaming it on Dr. Manhattan was really, really sick. You almost root for Dr. Manhattan getting his humanity back at the end, fighting Ozymandias, and then you realize his plan, and then everybody's just like, you know what, this is horrific, but if it's going to cause world peace, let it. It's shocking, not only because it's a hero that's behind killing mass vigilantes, killing the comedian, and behind this awful act, but in a way, it's his way to be a hero and save the world, while nuclear war and Armageddon is imminent. That is just something really deep. And then that whole last scene with Rorschach dying was just like, do it! And he's just like, no! Just like, do it! Oh my god, that was intense. And Rorschach's journal at the end. It's a bittersweet ending. You see, like, everybody in peace, but then there's Rorschach's journal, so it brings another question. Hey, it's gonna be like Watchmen, the graphic novel being made, or the world's gonna know the truth, and there is no world peace. Hence, going back to the comedian's theme of, it's all a joke. Life's just one big, giant joke. And it's just a really, really rough story when you think about it that way, just like realistically with the themes. It has so many layers of complexity, Watchmen, both the graphic novel and the film, and it is unlike any other film I have really seen. I don't think I've seen a superhero film like this or read a graphic novel like this. A story that has been like this story. Sure, it's in an alternate history. Sure, it has masked heroes, but a lot of it feels very real, and just like, it almost makes you think about the world and everything and our history. After reading it, it makes you think about humanity, how we are towards one another, and it's very deep in that regard. In my opinion, it is one of Zack Snyder's best films. I actually like Watchmen much more than I did Man of Steel or Batman Superman. Watchmen would probably be my favorite film from him. After that, it'd probably be Dawn of the Dead and 300. But Watchmen is just a tour de force. Watchmen's just amazing. Rorschach, Jack O'Haley's Rorschach, I mean, he's just perfect. His backstory and why he became a hero, and that girl getting murdered and him finally killing the guy. Like, if he killed the guy instead of arresting him, there'd be true justice. That was just messed up. His mother being a prostitute when he was younger and him getting abused was just crazy. Dr. Manhattan's story, I love the editing with the music there, and when he divorced his wife, and then he's just like, I'm tired of these people. I'm tired of the human race and being involved in the entanglement of their lives, you know, and that scene was just bittersweet and tragic. All along the Watchtower scene's just perfect. It gives you revved up, but I like all the little references and the atmosphere. It's a very, very atmospheric film. The cinematography and the production design are top-notch on this film. And it's the 80s, and it gives you that kind of like 1989 Tim Burton vibe, but in New York. And yeah, it has a great plot, and I know I must have rambled on this. I was getting excited, but there's just so much to think about in Watchmen. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know, okay? Let me know what you think about Watchmen in the comments below, and what are your favorite moments? What's your favorite character? Feel free to do that. And then my other YouTube channel, the Frederick Lopez channel, here, check out. There's either going to be a link or a box. My graphic novel review of Watchmen, and then I have a music video with Wars by Hurt with Watchmen. And then tune in for the channel. I'm going to be filming me play The End of Nye. I wasn't going to do it that way, but it's more of a test, so if you just want to chill out and watch me play a game, beat up some people in a video game, get some drinks and chips and sit back. Or just do it yourself and play the game and get some drinks and chips. That sounds good. But yeah, I would highly, highly recommend seeing Watchmen, the director's cut on Blu-ray. It is an enjoyable film, very different. Not for the faint of heart, but if you love something that's dark, just very well written, with an atmosphere, with great characters, you will not be disappointed. Yeah, that's my thoughts on Watchmen. I hope you have a great day. Check out my other works on my Frederick Lopez channel and Dark Knight of Steel. Till next time, guys.